And that leads us nicely to driving basics number 9, junctions observation. So I'm just going to go over a few things of what I would teach a learner. And a lot of, well, certainly some of the dads, especially that I've taught of learners, have found one thing that I teach learners a little bit strange and they can't really get their head around. And I'll go over that shortly, of course, what that is. But I'm going to show you how I would approach some junctions to avoid that incident ever happening. That never happens to me. It's not an accident. I don't have problems at giveaway junctions because I treat them all in a certain way. The first thing to understand is how dangerous that actually was. So not only had the road user not done any sort of observation before crossing the line, then registered that I'm there and kind of stops halfway out, but they're actually on the wrong side of the road as they emerge from the giveaway junction. So looking at more of the possibilities, it's lucky I wasn't coming the other way, because there is a high chance there would have been a collision there. If I was a cyclist coming the other way, there's a high chance of a collision there. And there's nothing good about this. This is just a real lack of skill. It's probably not knowledge or understanding. It's just skill, and attitude's a big one. So that person actually ended up following me back. That was me on my way to my nursery run to pick up Rosie. And that person actually followed me and ended up tailgating me, and they're just chatting away to the passengers. So you can tell the type of person that you've got in the car. It's all about attitude. Attitude's massive. First thing to understand about any junction that has giveaway lines painted. Giveaway lines, of course, 2 lines painted in the road. And that means give way to traffic on the major road. This does lead to some misunderstandings. But essentially, as I come up to a give way line, in my head, I think I have to give way, of course, to traffic from my right, but I also need to give way to traffic from my left. Now, how many times have you had someone, if you're on the major road, if you are a full license holder, you're on the major road, and someone from a side road on your right, as you're having to maybe go around a parked car or some sort of obstruction, or maybe the road's just really narrow, you have someone that hasn't properly observed to the left before they emerge past the line. And it causes you to have to put your brakes on. That should never happen. Certainly not if you do it in the correct way. So I'm actually going to approach that junction, and I'm going to turn right, same as the lady in the video. Now, this is a closed junction. So as I approach it, I'm going to select first gear and keep the clutch down. That doesn't mean I've got to stop, but I can come in nice and slow now. And I can't sit, I'm at the line now. I've got a good view to the right, but my view to the left is absolutely terrible. I'll show you that in a minute. And so I need to, of course, as per driving basics number 4, I believe, put the window down, listen. It sounds clear, but I need to see this is clear, which it is, before I actually put the car properly in the major road. Of course, my car is edging into the major road whilst I'm doing that, but approaching that junction, there was nothing about it that screamed keep going to me. I can't understand the mentality of it because it is so dangerous. Open and closed junctions is something that is taught to learners very, very early on. And it's a way of assessing. I was never taught it when I learned to drive, so I don't know if it's a newer thing, if I'm honest, but it's assessing a junction on the approach, how good your view is going to be. Are you likely to need first gear or second gear? Again, first gear doesn't mean you've got to stop, but there's a number of advantages, which I'll go over shortly. This one I'm going to keep in second gear because I can see really well to the right. And I just check, yeah, it's clear. So that's fine. It's downhill as well, so that's going to work really well. So that would be more of an open type junction, where I'm starting to see the major road as I approach and starting to formulate a decision. Every give way should not be approached in second gear, which seems to be not the clash as such, but certainly what some of the dads of my learners that I teach, they can't quite get their head around that I would get them to approach some giveaways in first gear. To me, that makes perfect sense. A closed junction, just to go over quickly again, as we're approaching the one we just did, we can see nothing, literally nothing. So it's starting to tell us that by the time we actually get to the line, we're very likely to see not a lot as well. An open junction, as I'm approaching, I can already start to see bits of the major road. It's getting much wider, so my view is going to be much better by the time I get there. I think personally, one of the most common mistakes that happens on the roads is when people turn left, they only observe right. Because very rarely do you have something coming from the left that actually stops you emerging onto the major road. I've even had it myself in Bury St Edmunds, where I was with a learner and we went round a parked car, and a lady waiting at the give way lines started to emerge. No problem, we carried on and then went and fitted through. As we went past, she shook her finger and went, "My road." So she thinks that because she essentially wanted to put herself onto the major road as her priority to do it. And that's a misunderstanding. That's a gap in the knowledge or the understanding. It's absolutely not. It's anything on the major road has priority over anything in the minor road, simple as. This one here, first gear, because I'm not seeing a huge amount. And as I get to the line, now first gear gives me this acceleration. Second gear at that speed, to effectively observe at that junction, second gear would not give me that speed. So that's the first advantage to selecting first gear. If I'm going to see less by the time I'm getting there, I'm going to have a much quicker acceleration onto the major road if I need it. There's therefore, of course, much less chance of stalling, which is always a bonus, really. It's embarrassing if you stall, especially like me, if you've been driving a number of years. And it's actually better for your engine. So if you have very low revs and you put lots of gas on, it's actually not good for the engine. Now, I'm not a mechanic and I never claim to be, but I know what's good and what isn't good for my car. My last car was a Vauxhall Corsa. It's actually being sold at the moment. It hit 200,000 miles and I just made the decision that I'm going to change car before I have any major problems with it. It was on the original clutch, that's how well it was driven. My mechanic says he's never seen a petrol Corsa get to that mileage before, let alone one that's been driven by learners. And part of that, again, will be because I make sure they're treating the engine well. So where they're coming into junctions, they're making the correct assessment on the approach and selecting the correct gear based on what they're going to need at the line. So at this point, if you haven't already, I'd really appreciate you to subscribe to the channel. There's plenty of videos and I'm always making more. And if you've got any requests, if you have things that you're not sure about, maybe a newer driver, certainly when I passed my test, I was out on the roads. I would have loved the option to just have a driving instructor with the ability to ask, can you do a video on this because I don't understand it? Genuinely would have loved it. So I know what it can be like. If there is anything that anyone thinks of, just let me know. I'm only a message away. Comment. My Facebook page is on the page, on the YouTube channel, so you can access me on there. One thing I would of course consider is once you've driven a number of years, you probably can do some junctions in second gear that a learner or a newer driver would still do in first gear. And that is just down to your experience. You're of course much more accomplished now. Your skills have got much better. But I would question, certainly from what I see on the roads, how many people are, I would say, doing it as safely as they truly believe they are being. And because, of course, when you emerge, for example, to the left, 990 times out of 1,000, there is no one coming from the left that actually stops you emerging. So when you emerge, you don't even realize that you weren't actually aware of anything to the left before you've crossed the line. And I think that's a really interesting one for people to try and think about personally, because it's something I didn't think about before as an instructor. So I'll just show you very quickly how I would identify and do an open or a closed junction, and the differences in how I would approach, and let me know, do you do it similar? Do you do it a little bit differently? Is there anything you change? So this is a closed junction. It's an A road. I'm turning right, so I need a lot more time to observe. First gear. As I roll in, I can see left, I can see right, and I'm going. Now that is the difference between observations and effective observations, okay? So really, there is a big difference. Drive instructors, we obsess about effective observations. How much that lady in the video earlier, I talk about a flash to bang a lot with my students because I'm ex-army, and the flash to bang is when you pull a grenade and you throw it, there's a flash of the fuse igniting, and then there's a bang, and that comes a few seconds later. And we use the phrase flash to bang for the time your brain needs to actually process what it's seeing and respond to it. So for example, as I get to a give way, I need to allow my brain that flash to bang time. If I'd done that junction in second gear, I would have needed to be faster, and I would not have effectively observed. I would have observed, but I would not have effectively observed. And that is a massive difference. First gear at that low speed also gave me that lovely acceleration that we talked about. Very important coming onto an A road. So up ahead, I'm going to be turning left at the end of the road. I've got a lot of parked cars on the approach, so I need to keep my speed a little bit slower. Give them the doors width of space as per driving basics number 8. And that is a closed junction. I can't see anything to the right. So as I approach, I'm going to select first gear, clutch stays down. And I'm going to roll, and I can see it's clear left, so I need to now make sure it's clear right. Yes, it is. And I actually got, again, an effective view up that road. There is parked cars everywhere there, so someone would be coming up where I might not see them until quite late. The view down the road isn't great. I'm going to come back now and try that in second gear and just show you the difference and why I would not even think of selecting second gear actually on the approach to that junction. So far my wife has said no to the clean shaven. My daughter Rosie has said no to the clean shaven. I've only got Poppy left to ask, but it's looking like the beard is going to have to come back. So I'm going to do the junction again in second gear, and what I'm going to do is make sure that my speed is still correct to observe effectively. Okay, so I'm going left at the end of the road. I'm going to select second gear, and I'm going to slow down so I can see properly up the road. And when I go now, the car is struggling, and I won't stall. Look, I've been driving 21 years, and this is my car. A learner will often stall that because they'll be slow enough to make the observations, but they won't be able to always acknowledge that they need first gear by that point. And that's why a lot of learners are taught to come up to closed junctions in first gear. That wasn't as good for my engine because the RPM was really low, and then I engage the clutch. It takes me longer to get the clutch up because I have to hold it more at the bite, put a bit of gas on, which is worse for my clutch. It's worse for the engine because the revs are low and I'm trying to build up the speed. And I accelerate really slow. So if suddenly I have made a mistake, or I then check my mirror and find someone has emerged is behind me coming up the road, I haven't got enough power for a little while until the sluggishness kicks away that I can actually get away. So they're the things I would look at, certainly. But yeah, do let me know in the comments. Do you do the same? Do you see there's a lot of problems? I mean, give way junctions are one of the biggest causes of certainly problems I see on like the dash cam groups that I follow, etc. Is just always people getting give way junctions wrong. And personally, I think I was never taught to assess a give way junction as I approached it. I was just always taught. I don't even remember what I was taught, if I'm honest. But if I'd been taught about open and closed junctions and thinking about first or second gear as I approached, I would have a much better understanding actually of what I was doing for the first few years, I think, of my driving. The next junction I'm going to do, I'm also turning left, but I would identify this as more of an open junction, and it is much, much wider as I start to approach it. Now, if I was turning right, I probably would select first gear, but I'm going to select second gear, and you can bring the clutch up. I like keeping it down as I get closer in case I need to stop, but I can see very clearly that's actually really nice. And I've checked both ways effectively, but I was able to do that faster, much wider mouth of the junction, which indicates I'm going to see more by the time I get there. So I'm really interested to hear from my license holders that like watching these videos. Do you approach giveaways in a similar way? Do you on reflection, do you think that actually you do observe effectively, and does it therefore take you first gear, second gear? Do you appreciate the differences, for example? So I hope you've enjoyed that one. Hopefully it helps someone. That's always just the aim. Get the debate going, let me know what you think, and I'll see you for the next one.